All right, we're going to continue with transformations of linear functions. We're going to jump right in. So if you want to see A part, just watch the previous video. We're going to jump right into part B. So it says let f of x equals 1/2 x plus 1 and t of x equals f of negative x. All right, so again, you can graph this with your slope and y-intercept, but you also can graph this with a table of values. So if I choose some x values, I chose even numbers just to make it easy to plug in. 1/2 of -2 is -1. -1 plus 1 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1/2 of 2, I'm just taking 2. 1/2 of 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So you can see if you go over -2, 0, 0, 1, and 2, 2, those points are on this graph. Now we are trying to describe a reflection. All right, this time we know it's a reflection across the y-axis. So we are looking for f of negative x. But the first thing we're going to have to do is find out what is negative x. And then after that, we can find f of negative x. Remember, we can use our function to do a lot of this, but first, knowing that the transformation is doing the negative of x. So we have 3 x values here. So all we have to do is the negative of those 3 values. So -2 becomes 2. 0 doesn't have a sign. 2 becomes -2. So this is my negative x value. T of x says we're going to graph f of negative x. So now we have to take these values and plug them into our original function to get our y values. So 2. 1/2 of 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Take 0. 0 times anything is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. And then -2. 1/2 of -2 is -1. -1 plus 1 is 0. All right, so now we're going to graph the function. So in order to find t of x, the first thing we had to do was multiply the input, the x value, by -1. And then we had to evaluate that for f. So we had to plug it into the function. So the graph of t consists of the points x and f of negative x. So we're looking at this one and this one. So these are ordered pairs to graph our new function. All right, so -2, +2. So we got to go left 2, up 2. We've got 0 and 1. And we've got 2, 0. All right, so using a table of values is the easiest way to find your new line when you're graphing a reflection. Right, so the orange line now represents t of x. All right, here's a study tip. It says a reflected point is the same distance from the line of the reflection as the original point, but on the opposite side of the line. So you can see if this one's supposed to be a reflection of the y, you can see that these points are the same distance, just in opposite directions or opposite side of the line. All right, describing horizontal and vertical stretches. Let f of x equals x minus 1, and then graph g of x equals f of 1/3 x. All right, we'll come back to B. Describe the transformations from the graph of f to the graph of g and h. All right, so again, you can graph this with your slope and y-intercept, or you can graph any function using x's and y's, table of values. X is your independent variable, so you can choose x's and plug those in to find y. Now, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be looking at 1/3 x. All right, so fractions Some students don't like fractions, but fractions are harder to graph. So when you get to choose your x's, choose x's in a way that will make this easy to graph. So choose multiples of 3. If we want to do 1/3 of x, let's choose multiples of 3. So let's do -3, 0, and 3. All right. Well, let's come back to g of x. First, we want to find f of x. So x minus 1. Okay, so x minus 1 would be -4. And then 0 minus 1 is -1. 3 minus 1 is 2. So if you come over here and look, you should see 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4. So -3, -4 is on there. 0, -1 is on here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2 is also on the graph. So I graphed it using your slope and y-intercept, but you can see that these points are all going to fall on this line as well. All right, so now we need to graph g of x. G of x says it equals f of 1/3 x. So first thing we need to do is find 1/3 of x, and then we need to plug that in to find f of 1/3 of x. So first let's look at what is 1/3 of x. So 1/3 of x. So 1/3 of -3 would be -1. 1/3 of 0 and 1/3 of 3. All right, so that gives us our 1/3 of x. Now, before we graph it, we're looking for f of 1/3 of x. So we got to plug it in to find our y values. So -1 minus 1 would be -2. All right, let me write the function down. So f of 1/3 of x. Again, we're going to take this. -1 minus 1 is -2. We're going to take 0 minus 1 is -1. And we're going to take 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. All right, so in order to graph g of x, we're going to graph our x and our f of 1/3 x. So that will be our g of x. All right, so let's graph this. Let's graph this in red. All right, so -3, -2. So -3 on the x. And then 0, -1. And then 3, 0. All right. And this will be g of x. All right, so again, what did we have to do? To find the output of g, you have to first multiply the input by 1/3, and then you have to evaluate it for f. So that means you had to plug it into the function to find it. And your points are going to be x and f of 1/3 x. Okay, so this is like your y value. So your x and your y for g of x comes from these two rows here. All right, let's look at b part. All right, for b part, we have h of x equals 3 times f of x. So again, we get to choose our x's. We can choose whatever x's we want, but this time we're going to be multiplying by 3, so it could get large very quickly. So let's just use small values like 0, 1, 2. All right, again, we can plug these values in. 0 minus 1 is -1. 1 minus 1, sorry, 1 minus 1 is not -2, it is 0. 0 minus 1 is -2. 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 0 minus 1 is - All right, so again, 1 minus 1 is 0 here. And then 2 minus 1 is 1. All right, so that gives our x and f of x. So again, that's just points on the f of x line. So we want to find h of x, which says take 3 and multiply it by our y value, so times f of x. So we're going to do 3 times f of x. All right, so that means we're going to take this row, we're going to multiply it by 3. So 3 times negative 1, 3 times 0, and 3 times 1. Now this will be our new function, our h of x. So x and 3 times f of x is the points we need to graph. So 0 and negative 3. 1, 0, and 2, 3. I graphed this point wrong as well. 1, 0. So 1 on my x and 0 on my y. 2, 3 would be over 2, up 1, 2, 3. And you can see how it does look like that would be a reflection over your line of reflection here. So this would be B part. We did A part just a minute ago. So it says describe the transformation from the graph of F. All right, so to find the output of H, you had to multiply each output by 3, and then the graph would consist of your x and your 3 times f of x numbers here. And that is all for example 3. All right, example 4 is going to be very similar. I want you to try this on your own and then come back and see if you got the correct answer. So f of x equals x plus 2, and then g of x equals f of 2x. So you get to choose your values in your table. What makes sense if you're going to be multiplying by 2. All right, also go ahead and do B part. H of x equals 1/4 times f of x. What numbers do you want to choose to make it easy to multiply by 1/4? I would choose multiples of 4 if it were me. All right, I will see you shortly with the solutions. All right, let's see how you did. Remember, you can choose different x's, so if you didn't choose the same x's, just make sure that you did the same process. So here's my x and y, that represents my f of x. And then for a part, I had to multiply x by 2. So I multiplied each x value by 2. And then I have to plug that into f of x. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0. And then 0 plus 2 is 2. And then take 2 and plug it in here. 2 plus 2 is 4. So to get the red line, g of x, I had to take x and f of 2x, these ordered pairs from my table, to get the line in red, which is g of x. So check to make sure you have similar points that fit on your line. All right, B part says h of x, 1/4 of f of x. So again, I chose x's and plugged it in to get my f of x. This time I did end up with a fraction, but it'd be hard not to for this one. So 1/4 of f of x would be 1/4 of the line here in the middle. And then my x and my 1/4 of f of x would be my ordered pairs that I graph. So you go out negative 2, 0, 0 up 1/2, and then over 2 up 1. The line in blue represents your h of x. So that is how you do example 4. So make sure you can describe those as well as graph them.